It's RuPaul's Drag Race. Season, hold on, sorry, I can't find my notes. Oh. I still can't, oh, there we go. Season 11, episode 11. This is a terrible episode. It's really hard to watch. I went to bed early with my toddler and we slept like 12 hours. But by the time I woke up, normally I can go on Twitter and I can look at just kind of my general timeline and I'm okay. And unless I've discovered it's a huge deal and then it's nuts and it's all over. So I found out right off the bat, spoiler, that Nina went home. And my brain was so unwilling to accept that they met Nina West that I was like, which one's named Nina? And I tried to picture him. And then I was like, wait, Nina West went home? Like, that was so not on my radar. My brain refused to even acknowledge the possibility that she could go home and was like, there must be another one named Nina. How did I not notice? My bookcases are getting done. If I was not recapping, I might not have watched the episode. I was that upset. But I know there's at least one person who was waiting for my recap. Hi! So my husband took the baby out and I went ahead and I have a lot of opinions, so I'm going to be kind of all over the place. I'm not going to go in chronological order because I have all these thoughts. So first of all, to me, I like Brooklyn, let me be clear, but Ru is favoring her so much that I'm starting to be like, like she wins all the mini challenges, and I'm like, you know, I kind of thought Nina should have won this mini challenge. Now, Brooklyn was good, but it's like, I guess she's a dancer, so she does her spins, and I like it, but it's kind of like if you had 3 favorites and someone always talked up one. After a while, you'd be like, well, you know, someone else has some good stuff. And it was better than the reading challenge. I think because I think the reads had been kind of overworked, whereas these were kind of off the cuff. Like, they just say something and it wasn't the focus. So I personally thought Nina, Evie, Brooklyn were all good. I thought Ikaria for me is someone that I kind of discounted a few episodes ago and was like, oh, she's going to go home. And then she'd do okay and I'd be like, oh, well, but I'd never really changed my mind. So they bring back the Eliminated Queens, which they do every season. So like this whole like, oh my gosh, the queens are back. I was actually surprised that one of them wasn't taking the place of one of the existing, because that's really common. So to me, when they're like super shocked, I get them being suspicious, like, okay, they came in and I was really suspicious, but to be like, I was shocked, it's like, you need to watch the show more because it happens all the time. And this whole, like, they don't deserve to come back, don't worry. Even if they come back, they don't stay. Like, that's the rule. Like, you have to be perfect to stay. And I think Trixie mentioned in one of her videos that she was the longest lasting queen ever, and I think it was 2 episodes. I'm going to come back to Trixie in a little bit. I have a lot to cover because I've been thinking a lot about a lot of different things. So they pair them all up. Brooklyn takes Plastique, who is just naturally beautiful. I think it's a good choice. They looked a lot like sisters. Once again, I see why Brooklyn won, but like a lot of people, I thought when they would show Ariel, and I'm jumping way ahead here, when they showed Ariel, I legit thought it was Vanjie. Then I'd see Vanjie and be like, oh no, that's Vanjie, the other one's Ariel. Like when they were next to each other, I wasn't confused, but when they would just show Ariel, I'd be like, oh, that's Vanjie, because it's so much about the style of the makeup and it looking good. So it was Vanjie makeup, but it worked on Ariel, and so in that split second, you go, it's like the world's best impression. So which is, you know, so I'm like, oh my gosh, and we saw kind of a little different silhouette. I would have preferred to see Vanjie in the dress and Ariel in the pantsuit, because I think it would have really been like, look, nothing that you've seen before. You know what I mean? Like a gown, a big gown at the bottom. So, I don't know, so anyway, so, I'm sorry, so I'll skip back. So, the Eliminated Queens, they all get paired up. And it's this whole thing about how, oh, well, I got Soju and it's so bad. It's like, well, someone's going to get her. Like, I never quite get that. It's the same thing with, like, who has to go home. And it's like, they have to say someone. And she's still complaining about Scarlett. And I just don't think the viewers have patience for that. Like, let that go. So they all had to say someone. Deal with it. Scarlett, you know what? You thought Scarlett should have to say herself? No. And frankly, a lot of the viewers agreed with Scarlett. So this has been a really weird episode, and this is the problem with reality shows when production gets too heavy-handed. Now, I have been giving it a lot of thought. Do I think the production is pushing? A lot of people do. I don't know. I've mentioned this before in other videos, but if you're new to me, you don't know this, which is I worked on a reality show. I worked on a competitive reality show. It was based on archery. So we had almost no... Well, we did have input, and we had almost no input. So it was based on shooting, and so we had no control over the scores. There was a couple times where we felt an inferior archer won based on luck, and it bummed us out because some of the contestants were absolute jackwagons. They were so mean to me. And I was the host, and I was an executive producer. They were so mean to me. Now, here's the good thing. I can tell you more details now if anyone's curious, but in my case, the guy that was the biggest jerk, totally karma came back on him, and I had nothing to do with it. He was going to ruin me in the archery industry. He was going to make sure that I never worked again. First of all, there wasn't that much money in archery, so it wasn't like if I never worked again. I've been a coach and a competitor for years. He came out of it. It turned out that a lot of the stuff, he had stolen an ex-girlfriend's credit card and identity theft, and he had a string of hundreds of people that he owed money to, and so he went down for nothing to do related to me, but it was the most satisfying feeling. And that's one of my life theories, is that if you are a bad person who treats others badly, it comes around to you. So all of a sudden today, he mad about how Soju's this and that, and Soju stuck up for Silky quite a bit, so I'm wondering how Soju felt when she saw the whole episode and saw Silky totally take her down, and Soju's makeup was so bad. So bad. It was like if you did a movie of like a 1980s Asian character with the worst possible makeup. And it wasn't that Soju was unattractive. It was the makeup was such a bad, the coloring was off, so super harsh, it didn't look good. It was like placed oddly on her face. And so it was really bad. But she stuck up for Silky, I think, because she partnered with her and wanted to be a good sport. And then Silky just threw her under the bus every interview. So that is something that I don't know how much. I have a theory that the characters that you relate to best on reality shows are ones that are the most authentic. I think even if, and you'll see this with the Housewives, even if they have some questionable, it's why people still like Ramona, even though she's a dingbat, is that she's at least really authentic about what's going through her head, even if it's horrible things. I don't personally like Ramona, but that's just kind of an example. And I think that someone like Evie's really authentic in their interviews, talking about their insecurities, and Silky always has up this, I'm the best, I'm the greatest, kind of almost delusional. They love me, they always love me, never takes responsibility for her behaviors, has never once said, you know what, like when Evie said, I was wrong for calling you untalented, that was coming out of my own anger. Who hasn't experienced that? So she owned up to it. So I told you, I am all over. I have Brooke. Oh, they accused Brooke of being shady. Someone has to go with Soju. I don't know why there's this like shady accusation. Somebody has to go with her. Silky's got a lot of complaining, excuses, the whole hip pad thing. It's like she's saying it like, I don't know, it's a mystery. You know how ephemeral hip pads are. I prayed over them, and it's like, it's not your cat that's sick that you can pray over. Although even then I'd say you pray over it and take it on the way to the vet. But it was just kind of a weird thing. I think, and this is my thing, I think RuPaul, okay, so my big theory, and this has a little bit to do with race, but I'm not going to go in too hardcore on that because there is a lot of racist fans. I see them occasionally when I do searches. And some of the language they use is completely unacceptable. Whether or not I want Silky to win, or I think that she is the best contestant, I don't wish her harm. I don't self-harm, people harming her. I think she would benefit from a little more self-honesty. I think she would do a lot better on the show if she was a little more honest in her interviews about what was going on in her head. And maybe that's what RuPaul's seeing. And her peers seem to like her quite a bit. Maybe on the car ride to and from the hotel, she's having these really great conversations. We're just not seeing it. And it's not my job to suss out what the editors are and aren't saying, and truthfully what people, you know, we've seen it time and time again at the reunion. People say, oh, you know, oh, it's the editing. People say, it's not the editing. You were mean to me. You did hurt my feelings. You know, if there was juicy bits of Silky being hilarious and everyone loving her, they would show it. That's good. That's entertainment. So, I don't really buy the editing angle. I know when we did our show, the editing, was pretty darn accurate, and the people in general had a reaction which was very similar to the crew, you know, what the crew experienced. Anyway, so this is what I think. I think Ru likes pageant girls more than viewers do. I personally enjoy new things, so like someone like Evie who's doing something new. Remember, they used to get all over Trixie for her makeup, and then what happened? People found it really interesting and different, and they liked the personality, and the judges were like, sometimes they're a little narrow-minded about what is drag. Now, for those of us that are not a part of the scene, a good example is to just kind of compare it, a couple years ago there was that Lars guy who did all the archery stuff. All of the archers were like, ugh, and like rolling their eyes, but everybody else thought it was cool. And that's a case where being too inside the sport can really work against you. So I think Ru is a little too inside drag and has a lot more appreciation for pageant girls than I think the viewers do. Just seeing someone look beautiful and walk a runway is not particularly interesting. And the drag race, they tend to look down on Instagram, whereas most of us consume Instagram, so we get it. So I think there's this little bit of difference. So the idea of being able to walk a runway is just, and especially because they don't really take it much into account. You know, they have a terrible runway and then they like just judge on the challenge. Or they have a great runway and they just judge on the challenge. So I'm not really sure why they're going to have the runway if it's not going to be part of the, you know, the final critique. I'm referring to the fly/cockroach monstrosity, and Silky still didn't end in the bottom, and Brooke's amazing transformation on the runway. And they did something, they thought Brooks was the most amazing transformation ever, but they didn't like Suga's. I liked it. A lot of people I saw online liked it. Okay, so I noticed a lot of the African American, specifically, and some of the Puerto Rican contestants that come on tend to be pageant queens, and I don't think the viewing public likes them as much as Ru does. And then there's also a lot of racism. But I think that's where we're getting some of this big disconnect between the viewers and Ru. And I think occasionally Ru just gets it wrong. She was not as wowed by, and part of this has to do, I think, with people who do particularly awesome talking head interviews that are really interesting and honest, which was like Katya, Latrice. Remember Latrice's amazing talking heads, quick one-liners. I think it's why people just love Bob the Drag Queen, who I liked a great deal. Kim Chi is someone who would have really funny talking heads where you just fell in love with them as a person. I'm pretty sure the judges don't see those in general. Ru might as an executive producer. I believe Ru's an executive producer. I would assume so. But, you know, maybe as the show has grown, doesn't see as much. But I realized suddenly today that Silky reminds me of Tyra from, was that season 2? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's season 2. If not 2, then 3. I'm sure someone will correct me, but I'm pretty sure it was season 2. And the viewers didn't like Tyra. I know I did. I was like, send her home! And she was insolent, and she was difficult and immature. And how did that turn out? Not particularly great. Tyra is someone who we don't see anymore. Didn't Tyra threaten to bomb DragCon? I mean, so I think long term, now I don't think that this doesn't necessarily make up for the contest kind of. Scarlett went too early. Sugar shouldn't have even been in the bottom 2. I don't think Nina should have gone home. I didn't think her lip sync was that bad, but apparently a lot of people did. Or at least Ru did. Ru was like, meh. I didn't think it was that bad. Just because they can't do flips and death drops and stuff. She could have moved a little more, but I didn't think it was that bad. And I don't think she should have been in the bottom because they said her outfit was a costume. It's a drag show. What is Evie doing every week? A costume? So, and I like Evie. That's not a slam on Evie. That's just a saying, like, why all of a sudden is it unacceptable for a really super strong artistic point of view, and it's a problem, especially when you go, it had a really strong message behind it. And so I don't know. I'm clearly all over the place. And Silky uses Sharpies on eyebrows and complain about heels, but I think that Silky's like Tyra, and it's not going to work out long term. But I think on the other hand, and then Ariel and her wig gate. That was someone who does not like confrontation. So when it was one person, she was willing to say it. Then when everyone confronted her, she backed down. I don't know what the truth is. My guess is that she didn't leave one, and then she accidentally left the rest, and then she didn't care, but then when she had a chance to kind of make a moment, she did, but then she didn't, and I don't know. But my thing is, so Nina went home, Silky and her were in the bottom. Silky didn't seem to know the words. She had some real performance issues. Stuff was getting stuck all over her feet. Her hair was in her face. She would like walk all the way up and stand on something to not really do anything. To me, it was sloppy, 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 sloppy. Nina, on the other hand, didn't move as much, but I just kind of felt like this is the first time lips. I don't know. I just didn't think Nina should have gone home. It seems to be a popular opinion, but this is what gives me some comfort. She is in a really strong position for post-Drag Race. She's getting a lot of love on Twitter. A lot of people enjoyed her. She's in a similar situation to, like I said, Latrice, Trixie, Katya. I'm trying to think of who else. Where there was just a really strong vision where people, I think, like camp more than... I don't think Ru likes camp as much as the viewers do. I don't think they appreciates it as much. I think they have a much sexier, cooler aesthetic, and I don't necessarily think that Ru sees and enjoys it as much as viewers do. And that's fine. We all have our point of view. I love camp. I love it. I love the funny queens. Marry Bianca Del Rio. I don't think Bianca Del Rio is interested. Oh, Ben de la Creme is another one who... people just loved, and I think that All Stars tends to be sort of like okay, now that we understand what the viewers see in you, now we're going to view you using that scorecard. I think that's what comes in a little bit. So there you go. So that is my theory, is that long term this is all going to even out. Just so you know, if you're interested, Nina West does a ton of charity work. It's worth sending her some love on Twitter. Don't send hate to anyone. That's not our job. Like I said, I don't wish harm to Silky. I just don't necessarily agree with the way the judging is. But frankly, I think Brooklyn, who I do genuinely like, is also getting too much love. I don't think she deserves quite that much. I think Vanjie should have won this. I think a couple of times she won over people where she absolutely deserved to be in the top two. But I don't necessarily know that she always deserved to win. So that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion. I think if you went back and looked at my videos, you would see that I was worried about Nina because I just don't think that they appreciate camp. I think Brooklyn will be in the top. Akaria might sneak in there. I can't remember who else is still in. Who else is still in? Let's see. Let me look at my little Wikipedia cheat sheet that shows you where everybody is. So we have Akaria, Brooklyn, Silky, Vanjie, Evie. I would like to see Brooklyn, Vanjie, Evie. Those would be the ones that I'm most interested in. I think it's very likely that Evie will go home and will be another one like Alaska, who comes back and does really well. I think Evie will do really well long term, especially if she can keep the weird and then polish it. Do you know what I mean? So she takes this completely unique point of view and just gives it a nice, smooth top coat, which just comes with experience. I think that she'll be someone who will go really far. I like her. I would not be bummed if she was in the top 3. I just don't think RuPaul's going to let her in. I think it's very likely Akaria, Brooklyn, and Silky. Vanjie's also been holding on. I would love to see Vanjie as well. But I feel like either Vanjie or Silky are going to get knocked out, and it'll be likely that Brooklyn and Ikaria, because Ikaria has that super polished pageant look. She looks beautiful. There's no doubt that her drag aesthetic is gorgeous, and I think that's something that Rue really appreciates. I prefer funny, so I prefer, but that doesn't mean that my opinion's right and I'm not evaluated as a person. I'm giving a lot of caveats. Anyway, thank you so much. Please hit me up in the comments. Please tell me who you think, who do you want your top 3, but who do you think Rue will put through to the top 3? Those are 2 different questions. So let's hear it.